Democracy awakens in the Middle East, but what seems like a spontaneous revolution was actually a strategically planned event, fabricated by professional consultants.
The events in North Africa are orchestrated down to the finest details.
These revolution consultants are the worst nightmare of every regime. Here you see the symbol of the resistance. These revolution consultants are funded and supported by American organizations.
They are becoming the red flag for the secret police of these places.
These revolution consultants mainly operate in countries in which the Western world has a clear interest. Hardly a coincidence, it seems.
The institutions that support him, you take those away, the regime has to fall.
Cairo in early February. The sudden appearance of the wild horsemen at this demonstration shocked the world over. These aggressors on their horses stormed into the crowd and split the peaceful demonstration apart. What seemed like a brutal attack by representatives of the old Mubarak regime was actually a staged affair. It was intended for the national and international media. The message? Egypt is in a state of chaos. Provoked by these false attacks, demonstrators reacted with violence, and so the situation escalated. Always at the forefront, the members of the movement of the 6th of April, these men have been carefully trained for tenuous situations like this. Right from the start, the revolution consultants follow a specific strategy. A strategy developed by the Serbian Optor organization. The organization responsible for the downfall of the Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic. This strategy, successful in Serbia in the 90s, became a blueprint. It proved successful once again when used for the revolution in Egypt. Optor organized workshops in the outskirts of Cairo. In these workshops we were trained in the art of peaceful resistance. We had to learn that the police are not our enemy, and that we must try to get them on our side. We had to impress people with the idea of non-violent resistance.
قرب الأحداث الكبيرة زي 25 يناير و6 أبريل 2010 كان وأحداث خالد سعيد كان الدعوات اللي احنا بنكتبها على الإنترنت والفيديوهات اللي احنا بننزلها على الإنترنت لكل الناس.
Opposition movements from all over the world come to the Serbian capital of Belgrade to be educated in the art of overthrowing a dictatorship. The Serbs succeeded with their own revolution 12 years ago. They now use their experience for their revolution training school, the Center of Strategy for Non-Violent Resistance, or for short, CANVAS. Chief instructor Serda Popovic is one of the few CANVAS members who would show his face publicly in front of the camera. It was in his office where the Egyptian revolution was planned.
The trick is that you don't push, you pull. What you're actually doing is actually persuading these people from the police force, from military force, that there will be a place for them in the new Egypt.
It wasn't just Egyptians that trained here. Revolution training is high in demand these days.
The part of our work now is focused back to Middle East because of the few reasons. First of all, the struggle is not over. And we're already talking about 8 or 9 different countries. In some of these countries, which I of course wouldn't mention, we have very good groups which we are communicating with. We don't want to endanger these groups, so we wouldn't speak about this openly. In some of these countries, we are just observing situation and preparing analytics. It is very interesting what will come out of it.
I had already tried everything to get rid of him. Now I find something that does the trick. It works. Here, in front of the Belgrade Parliament, was the trial run for Optor, with many other revolutions to follow.
How many countries you were working with that after this?
We worked with 37 countries after the Serbian Revolution. We had a successful 5 revolutions now before Middle East. And this is Georgia, Ukraine, Lebanon, Maldives, and now Egypt and Tunisia. And the list will grow longer. And then at the end, we don't have an idea in how many countries the clenched fist of Otpor was used. It's probably a dozen countries right now.
After Milosevic's downfall, Optor became an international phenomenon. The symbol of the fist reappears all over the world as the signature of the revolution makers. Established in Serbia, the fist re-emerged in Kumara, Georgia, followed by Oborona in Russia. then in Venezuela and Iran, and at last it was used by the opposition groups in Egypt. The American author and Princeton University lecturer William Engdahl has written for over 30 years about Washington's secret geopolitics. He has established a widespread information network that extends deep into America's Secret Service. He is convinced OPTOR is not acting alone.
The key actors in OPTOR went on to create Canvas, as you mentioned, and operate in some 50 countries. They are simply following an agenda given them by people in Washington for regime change. They're using this deniability that they're simply idealistic young people from Serbia who did it successfully and are so happy about it they want to show the rest of the world. That's hardly a plausible explanation in my view. I think they're getting well financed by American intelligence services for doing this. And the target countries they target, like Egypt and most recently, and so are precisely the countries that are on the Pentagon agenda for destabilization and regime change.
In New York, we are meeting again with Serda Popovic. We want to find out if the OPTOR organization is actually following a secret agenda of the United States. But to our disappointment, Popovic is reluctant to talk about his arrangements with American organizations. The OPTOR movement was indeed financed by American tax money during the Serbian Revolution, a fact that only became public knowledge after Milosevic's downfall. This chapter, however, is one that OPTOR is keen to close.
Unlike popular belief that this is funded from America, Canvas is 100% privately funded. So, I mean, my organization's biggest donor is a Serb you're going to meet. His name is Slobodan Đinović, and he's also my partner in this organization. This gives us independence. Our idea is, okay, let's use this momentum to try to build a kind of permanent institution. Let's see what we can do with great scholars. There are great scholars here in US, in Boston, here in New York. What if we can make a permanent international think tank which will brief the world on what is happening, so we make sure that the world won't get amazed next time the bunch of strategically organized kids cannot come out and kick down the guy like Mubarak.
Columbia University invited Popovic as a guest lecturer.
This is the author thing from the top of our book, and this is the famous Associated Press photo of people protesting in Cairo.
The guest from Serbia enlightens the students on the truth behind the changes in the Middle East. Who was actually behind it all? Popovic himself knew for years, but only now he can talk about it publicly.
This was not spontaneous 19-day revolution. Forget about this illusion. This is, only very shallow understanding of things. They were there for a very long time. The young people of Arab world has awakened and understood that they're powerful.
The old city of Tunis. The Tunisians were the first in the Arab world to overthrow their government. Yet the euphoria about their dictator's downfall was hardly noticeable. The uncertainty of the political future leaves the Tunisian population anxious. For decades, the people of Tunisia were oppressed by Ben Ali's totalitarian ruling. These days, the capital seems to be dominated by a loud and harsh atmosphere. Its people agitated, yet overwhelmed by their freedom. The center of the town appears like a Roman forum. Everywhere, heated discussion about politics. The new generation wants change. Most of the young people are well educated. They see themselves as Westerners. Until recently, scenes like this were thought impossible. Suddenly the fear is gone, at least during the moment of revolt. The people are standing up. Finally, the world recognizes the desperate political situation of their state. Amine Ghali has been an activist from the start. He shows us the photographs of a meeting in Morocco. This was the beginning of a long hoped-for change in Tunisian history.
We had a trainer from Belgrade, yes, actually from the city of Belgrade, who came and trained the participants on these strategies focusing mainly on the Serbian experience. After the wave of changes in the 90s and early 2000s in Eastern Europe and in the Soviet bloc of non-violent strategies, at least there was kind of an influence to the Arab region, that this is what we should be doing to bring in change to our own countries.
The time was ripe for a revolution test run. Discontentment with the political situation had been growing amongst the population for years. Life in the slums had become desperate. Lack of food and medical care left the people without any perspective for a better future. With living conditions going from bad to worse, the Tunisians could hide their anger no more. The activists saw their opportunity. They used this anger to achieve their goal, the overthrowing of Ben Ali's regime. In a way, we have done the same thing that they did in Belgrade in the 90s. Non-violent resistance, the ridicule of the regime. There was no violence in the street. Even when the police intervened, we did not fight. The people from Optor gave us a book in which they described all their strategies, how you have to proceed when you want to overthrow a regime. That book, which is used by opposition movements worldwide, was actually written in Boston, USA. Here is one of the intellectual centers of democracy activists. The book From Dictatorship to Democracy is considered the Bible of the non-violent resistance. The author of this revolution guidebook lives in one of the working-class neighborhoods in the outskirts of Boston. 83-year-old Gene Sharp wrote this masterpiece. It contains 198 methods of non-violent action.
And when people are not afraid, that dictatorship is in big trouble. Big trouble. Be stubborn. Based on basic human stubbornness. They refuse to do what they're told to do. They insist on doing what they're told not to do. And then you do that politically. And that's the essence. But the details are much more complicated.
Gene Sharp taught many years at Harvard University. His work describes various strategies from hunger strike to the unmasking of intelligence officials. His assistant, Jamila Erkip, has the main duty to distribute Sharp's work. His book, From Dictatorship to Democracy, has been translated into 34 languages.
This booklet is the Arabic version of From Dictatorship to Democracy, which is one of Gene Sharp's most important and widespread publications. It's been disseminated very, very widely, this Arabic version. So a few years ago, maybe perhaps 2 years ago, an individual had it printed by a publishing house in Beirut.
Sharp's guide to revolution is feared by dictators around the world. Venezuela's President Chavez calls Sharp a rabble-rouser in the service of the CIA. In Russia, the possession of the book is considered a hostile act against the government.
The manuscript for that was in a printer in Moscow. And the FSB, the successor to the KGB, arrived. And he said, "What is this?" He looked at it. He said, "This is a bomb." Stopped the presses immediately. The presses were stopped. The people who took the translation were away with them. They went to a printer outside of Moscow, got it printed, and brought the copies back in. They went sale in 2 bookstores in Moscow. That within 2 or 3 weeks, mysteriously caught on fire.
With internet, anybody has access to Sharp's revolution strategies.
What Mr. Sharp one time called nonviolence as a method of warfare. And they are going in every place since the end of the Cold War to destabilize regimes which offer resistance to this larger agenda, the globalization agenda as Washington defines it.
Are all these revolutions actually initiated by the Americans?